Good afternoon, sir.
Hey, Ken, how are you?
Good.
Good.
Are you home?
I am home.
Good. I didn't want to be the only one home.
Well, I'm not going to be joining you for too long, so you're going to be on your own here in a minute. How was your day?
It was a little cool this morning with a dog. I think it was 4 degrees. 4. Well, what we do is we gauge the severity of the day by how many hoodies I have to wear. And I'm still only at 2 hoodies. Because there was no wind. If there was wind today, that would have definitely been a 3 hoodie day. And that's the max, because I only have 3
Yep.
hoodies.
Do you have a blog?
A blog?
You should have a Ken's forecast.
Yeah.
It's a 2 hoodie day.
Gee, chilly out there today, folks. Oh. How did we get live on YouTube?
We could shut off our cameras and mute ourselves, and we would not appear.
Oh,
There we are.
there they are. Now, last meeting when Jean Marie was home remote, my wife told me YouTube she filled 75% of the screen.
Ken, that was my fault. I had it on gallery view instead of speaker view. That was
okay.
purely my fault. Yeah,
Okay.
I changed it halfway through the meeting. It's better now.
Okay.
So like right now, you're up at the top of the screen and
We're
not
just a little square.
Yeah, that was completely my fault. But once she told me, I fixed it. So
He's gonna give me a thumbs up over there,
Yeah.
I think, right?
I'll get the agenda downloaded here. Tom, is the agenda on the website?
It is.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, both of them are updated. Does you hate how you have to scroll up after? It's me too. Should I be waiting for him, Tom? Usually the on air or he comes out. Right? Fine. Well, you get the big screen.
Oh.
you are all set? Yeah,
That was cute.
that was
That's
pretty
amazing.
funny. Perfect. You'll be Tony today. So I got a thumbs up, but no on air. Should we go with it? Yeah. Okay. Good evening, everybody. This is the Wednesday, January 12th, hybrid special meeting of the Town Council. I'll call this meeting to order at 5:32. The first item is the Pledge of Allegiance. All rise. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Like,
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the town manager is going to help us with roll call.
Here?
Johnson,
Here,
the order set of, I'm sorry.
It's a difficult job.
Just look at the face. Counselor Anderson, Counselor Hamel. Here. Counselor Kenneth Johnson,
yes, here.
Stuart Calucci.
Here.
You didn't ask for me.
Oh, and
Katarina's here.
I'm sorry, you weren't in my view of you. All present and accounted for, sir.
Excellent. We're all here. We're here for a single order. It's order number 22-004. Act on the request to approve a staff appreciation day for Friday, January 14th, 2022, in recognition of the exemplary satisfaction ratings and positive customer service experiences noted by residents in the community-wide survey. And the town manager brought this forward.
Yes, quite simply, as the council's aware, and hopefully most of the public, we did do a community survey. One of the high-level takeaways, at least for me, was the outstanding customer service recognition that our residents give to town staff. And I guess I appear before you this evening seeking your approval to offer as in part acknowledgement and recognition, but also reward to town staff to have an employee appreciation day. And I propose that to be this coming Friday, this week. That would make for an extra long weekend. I think this would be something that would certainly be well received by staff. The assistant town manager and HR director did put together some financials just for some discussion around kind of the fiscal impact of this. I will certainly also say that there's undoubtedly, a lost productivity from a day when staff is not here and diminished customer service. But I hope in recognition of the good efforts to date that residents will understand, we'll certainly do our part to provide notice through social media and other means of the fact that town hall will be closed and other non-emergency operations on Friday. So I humbly ask for your support.
Thank you, sir. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Katarina.
Yeah, I happened to be meeting with Mr. Hall and Mr. Gallagher on something else when this originally came up, not this particular idea, but I was very enthusiastic about making sure that we recognize our employees and staff. As I recall, when I watched the meeting from afar, the last time when I was remote, the gentleman who did the presentation on the survey he himself was blown away. You could just tell by the way he was talking about it, by the fact that we got such high scores. And this is a guy who does surveys all over the country. So I just think it makes perfect sense. I said, oh, let's do a barbecue, but then I can't remember which one of the management team was like, well, geez, we got a long weekend coming up. So why don't we give them a day off? I thought that was great. So I'm fully in support of this.
Just if I could put a finer point, the 93% score that we attained is to be compared to 52% for the Northeast region and 51% nationally. So that's even more gratifying to kind of see how we rank up comparatively.
It's remarkable. Any other discussion? Councilor Anderson.
I think this is great, and I'm really pleased to see, Liam and Tom bringing this forward after we got those survey results, because I was thinking the same thing, like, wow, that's like so remarkable to see how well the town staff is being perceived by the community. And so whatever we can do to reward them in a simple gesture, such as giving them some of their own time back, I think is a great idea. And then in addition to that, I just think keeping people home right now with COVID and giving them that 4-day stretch is good for their health and well-being as well. Doesn't do us any good as a town if people are catching COVID and can't work because they're sick. And so I think just where things are right now, even though that has really nothing to do with their performance, I think it's just another measure we should be thinking about with COVID right now. So I really think this is a great idea, and I'm really supportive of it.
Excellent.
Thank you. Councilor Hamel.
Thank you. There's an old saying that timing is everything. So last week we reviewed the town survey, which is the first time we've ever done this. And the public told us they were very satisfied with the quality and level of services and very high ratings for the performance and commitment of our town staff of 189 employees. This figure does not include school employees. The town manager and assistant town manager have recommended that we award them with spot recognition of a PTO day to be scheduled and taken 2 days from now. A quick canvassing of the town council confirmed broad support for this. So there's no question that spot recognition is a valuable motivator and that the town staff is certainly deserving of recognition. And I support it as well with the following exceptions. One, in Western culture, it's considered rude to ask someone what a gift costs or what an award costs. But that's not the case in our role as town councilors. So I asked several questions. I asked if, at first, I asked, what's the value of this recognition? What's the cost associated with it? At first, I was told we don't have that number. Then I was told we don't have the authority to ask because it involves department level cost data, and the town council has no authority to question numbers at that level of detail. Then I was told we don't have the accounting systems and details to give us this. Then I was told in an email that it would be effectively budget neutral. After several phone calls and emails, I'm pleased to report that I received the detailed breakdown of PTO expenses, including actual costs for PTO, total by several breakdowns. And I'd like to share the following information with the council now that's going to become part of the public record. And in the future, I expect that town staff will provide similar budgetary information in detail. And I'm doing this first for the council to understand, and second, for us to be able to make right decisions, and then to explain and align the public around it, who actually are helping us to pay for it. Over the past year, the town staff has received COVID relief monies, and there are additional COVID funds that are sitting someplace that need to be brought to the attention of the town council by the town manager for us to review and approve how these funds will be spent. Though as a council, we may not have the authority to review and revise departmental level detail, figures which affect the overall budget for the town are clearly within our purview. So I look forward to developing the capability for financial figures like this to be produced and reviewed on a quarterly level for appropriate transparency of financial spending and fiscal health. So I would like to review a couple of numbers with you. Our total annualized PTO expense is approximately $2.041 million. The total cost per employee of PTO is about $10,803. Divided by 37 average PTO days per employee equals approximately $291.97. That's the value and the cost of an additional PTO day per employee, roughly $300. So with that, I think that is not inappropriate, but how we got there is not good. So I'm asking that details that were shared with the town council and the memo from Leon Gallagher that was sent today be included with the minutes for this meeting and be available for the public to read in detail and serve as a guide for us to use in dealing with future requests that involve appropriations and expenses of this nature. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Just to clarify, I did receive a request from Counselor Hamel regarding some supporting detail, and I immediately forwarded it to the town manager. At the same time, I was canvassing all of the other counselors, and town manager responded. It may not have been to your liking or as speedy as you would have liked, but that's kind of how it unfolded. I don't think that we were trying to ignore your request or anything like that. Any other discussion on it? Okay, I just like to say, similar to Councilor Anderson, the timing of this, I think, is important to consider. That COVID is circulating very rapidly in our community, and getting people away from each other for a couple of days is good for your mental health and good for your physical well-being. I think is a tactical and smart move right now. And kind of couple that with, it's a really tight labor market right now, guys. People are leaving their jobs left and right. And we have really reliable data that shows that our community values what our employees are able to offer and do for them. And I think it's a small thing. There is a cost associated with it, but what a perfect way to recognize a good job, a job well done. So it can be a win-win. And I think these are the types of small things that you do that help to build loyalty and keep people happy working here. So I strongly support this, and I appreciate the town manager and assistant town manager for bringing it forward. Mr. Hull, would you call the roll?
Yes. Counselor Seither.
Yes.
Counselor Paul Johnson.
Yes.
Counselor Katarina.
Absolutely, yes.
Counselor Anderson.
Yes.
Counselor Hamel.
Yes.
Counselor Ken Johnson.
Yes.
Chair McLucci.
Yes.
Nice.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn
So
the
moved.
special meeting? Second, okay. And we have to do a roll call again, Tom.
Yes, we do. Counselor Seither,
Yes.
Counselor Paul Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina,
Yes,
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Ken Johnson,
Yes.
Chairman Glucci.
Yes. And we are adjourned.
Where do we go?
Can't go anywhere.
I don't know, Don, you made me want a 5-minute break. Can you take a 5-minute break?
Thanks, Ken. Nice seeing you.
Oh, you're done?
I'm done.
Unnecessarily, but thank you.
What is it?
Are we ready to hop right in, or do we want to
No,
take
I'm
2
ready.
minutes?
I know, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hey, John, did you not see my hand up?
No, I did not.
Okay, not.
I
you can-
apologize.
But you can see it, right?
I can see it now. There's
Okay,
Just as a side note, Counselor Johnson, that's why I had Jean Marie and the council as a split screen, so you can see, it's looking up there at you, it's just, you're small, that's all.
You're
oh,
small.
okay.
So put your hand up nice and high, that's all, because.
or say something.
But you're elevated.
Would you like to add comments at the beginning of the workshop, Ken?
Yeah, for the record, no. I mean, I supported what was done, that's all.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry I missed you.
And we all miss,
Yeah, I didn't see him.
nobody saw it, so.
Did you see Jeff Levine? Is
Yeah, he's in.
He is here.
Do you want to bring him in now?
Yeah, let's go ahead and bring it
Okay.
in.
Jeff Levine, I'm just gonna bring you as a panelist, so you're coming in. You want to start? Sorry.
Okay. I will call this meeting to order. This is the Scarborough Town Council Workshop, Wednesday, January 12th. The workshop is to discuss the GMO requests by the Downs Development Group. I'm going to go ahead and do a roll call, even though we already have, just because we have a remote participant. Tom, would you help me with that?
Sure. Counselor Seither,
Here,
Counselor Paul Johnson,
Still here.
Counselor Katarina,
Yes, here.
Counselor Anderson,
Here.
Counselor Hamel,
Here.
Counselor Ken Johnson,
Yes.
Chairman Glucci.
Here, yes. Okay, so we do have a slide packet. I want to preface this by, I guess, a little background on why we're meeting publicly. And there was some disagreement amongst counselors and town staff about whether we should do this behind closed doors or in public. And I think that, it was slightly tilted in favor of doing it this way in public. And I think partly the reception that we had to the proposal that was made to us during the workshop on December 15th. Did anybody support it? And I don't think anybody did. From as written, I don't think it was supportable. And so we were placed in a situation where we could say, no, come back next year. We can go back, resubmit, with some tweaks, take another blind shot, because to be honest, we didn't provide a lot of guidance about what to expect in the exemption application process. So it's partially our fault. I actually intentionally left that vague and blank, but I think we all looked at it and like, well, what are you building? There were some pretty big pieces missing. So, after some thought, and I had, at the workshop, asked Councilor Anderson to help try to figure out how do we move this thing forward. And I got together with Councilor Paul Johnson to, after the survey came out, to kind of flush some ideas out. And we socialized some thoughts that seemed to be well received. So it didn't get 0 votes. It was, 5, 6, 7, I think is where we would probably wind up. But the concepts were well received. So I feel like this is important feedback for the Downs teams to receive and understand just where our thoughts are. And for the public to understand how these things progress or can progress. So I wanted to start today by just going through a brief timeline of the process for this exemption request to date. And I'm going to have Paul pull up the slides.
Mr. Chair, while he's pulling up the slide, if you don't mind, I'd just like to clarify a statement that you made, because I'm sure it was not intended to mean this was not done behind closed doors. I'm sure you meant an executive session. It's
Yes.
important for the public to understand that we do nothing behind closed doors. Everything is in front of the public, and hence, here we are.
Great point, Ken. So we are not able to meet as like three counselors outside of a public forum like this. Or, unless it's an executive session. So those were the options we have. We can't go to a bar and all get together and kind of hammer these things out. We can meet individually so those are the constraints that we have. And it's probably not well understood. Thanks for clarifying that. Before we jump in, I did also want to introduce, in late December, we hired a consultant, Levine Planning Strategies, to help us with this request. So in the fall, Councilor Anderson and Paul Johnson had put together an RFP, understanding that we were going to need some help evaluating the request that we knew was coming. And we, I think, unanimously authorized Tom to enter into an agreement with Levine Planning Strategies. And Jeff is here with us. Jeff, I don't know if you're able to take a minute to introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks to members of the town council. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the work with you and with the town on this project. My name is Jeff Levine. I'm the principal of Levine Planning Strategies. We're a land use and housing consulting firm based in Southern Maine in Portland. And I've done a lot of work, mostly in Maine, with communities on large developments that are, these ones that are bigger than you often see in a community, particularly in communities in Maine, and trying to think through how that's similar or different to doing your normal development review. So negotiating the types of agreements that you're working on, thinking through how, town ordinances might apply, things like that. So I've been happy to be brought on board. I also have brought with me a couple of folks who I think have specialized skills in looking at things like fiscal impacts, Frank Mahidi from FXM, and Carl Seidman, who's an economic development consultant, who's going to look at some of the issues related to housing and a successful downtown in the Downs and how that might work, partially based off the work that the development team's consultants have done and partially based on his extensive experience really all over the world. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's a brief introduction to us, and we're looking forward to working with you on this.
Thank you, sir. So we'll jump into the process. And, in October, Crossroads did submit a formal request to the town clerk for an exemption from the growth management ordinance, and that's been included in several packets. We had a change in leadership in the council, as is typical after elections, and we created a new liaison position and appointed Paul Johnson to be focused on working with the Crossroads team. And that was something that was new, but I think it's helped to bridge the communication gap that's existed for quite some time. December 15th, we had a workshop with Crossroads to better understand the request. And we also selected Levine Strategies to be our expert consultant. Over the Christmas break, Paul and I, and Tom joined us for a period as well, did meet to discuss the exemption request. This was shortly after the community survey had come out, and we formulated some framework or concepts that we've socialized since. Early January, Councilor Anderson did provide a framework that's included with the packet tonight for how we might proceed with reviewing this request or this exemption request. And here we are tonight. So there's been a good amount of time that's passed since the exemption was requested. Not a lot of active work on it, I don't think. But here we are. So today I want to start by going over what Paul and I socialized and then go over the process that Councilor Anderson put together and then talk through some next steps. And Mr. Levine's welcome to chime in if he thinks that he can add some value. And a lot of these slides are, as much for the public and to bring us up to speed. There's a lot of hyperlinks that reference other documents that When we say traffic related improvements that, the Downs is responsible for, it actually links to their traffic movement permit, which outlines them and lists them. The exemption actually links to the exemption requests that the Down team submitted. So I think, and Paul, you're going to help me with this, but I will say when we got together, I think we had a common understanding that this wasn't going anywhere as it was presented. And there's a lot of risk associated with that, or there was a lot of concern for us. And there's a lot of benefit to the town for this being a successful project. So we threw some ideas on the wall, and I don't necessarily think they'll all last, but I think we found some kernels that people appreciated or would welcome. The community survey, there's some conflicting items here. So I think it was clear that the residents feel residential growth is happening too quickly. And we picked up on that. They also prioritize investments to improve traffic flow and would like to see more affordable housing. And they do support investing in a community center. I think those kind of 4 tidbits were loud and clear in the survey to me. And they're a little bit contradictory in that, how do you get more affordable housing without, more housing? And Councilor Katarina.
Mr. Chair, not to pick on terms, but didn't they also talk about workforce housing in that survey?
I'm gonna, yes, I'm
Because
gonna lump
affordable
that.
and workforce are 2 different things, and people keep
I'm gonna lump them
conflating the
together
two,
for
so.
this discussion. Yes, I think both are relevant.
Okay.
I probably should have put workforce there because it's a broader umbrella.
The question was housing affordability, which I think
Right.
it's just both of those. So
Right. I just don't want people, because sometimes people see the term affordable housing, they go, oh my God, we don't want those people in town. And so.
Dwellings that people can afford.
Yeah, there you go. And I think we need to do a better job as government officials and elected officials explaining housing that's affordable for people than just using the term affordable housing. That's my only, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. It's
Great.
And I
Point
It's
taken.
just
Go ahead.
mine.
Yeah, I think Jean Marie is raising a good point about that particular element, because again, while we kind of said affordable housing, workforce housing in the survey, we didn't really give them a definition.
Right.
And so I don't really know what that means from their perspective, right? Like, it's something that I think we would need to dig in more with the community to say, when you're not happy with affordable, when you're not happy with workforce, like, what does that really mean? Because it could mean they want more single family affordable workforce housing, not necessarily
Right.
multifamily units.
Right.
So I do think there's some conclusions we have to be careful as we talk about the survey to not draw too deep insights until we've kind of dug a little bit deeper to better understand from the community a little bit more details.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
yeah, I'd like to back up just a hair if you don't mind. Again, it's for the public because they have a slide in front of them with a bunch of bullets with some, some content to it. And the reason for that is this is our first discussion as a council or as a group on the exemption, where the Downs folks didn't bring us anything to have a discussion about. And like anytime you need to vet things out there, you have to be able to focus to have that discussion. So hence you and Paul came up with some bullet points, again, just to start the discussion. There's nothing other than that. It's just to have a discussion. And the reason for that is nothing was brought to us by the Downs. Just wanted to clarify that.
Fair enough. And I'm hoping that this background or premises are things that we are reasonably well aligned on. It seemed like we were. These are kind of the facts to date. I did make a tweak since I socialized it. So the 5th bullet down, I think we stated a partnership, flexibility, and I added community support is something that's needed to ensure a vibrant mixed-use town center is created and successful. And that's a key component that I don't think that we've spent enough time with, is how do we get the community excited about what's happening there, right? We've had the zoning in place for 20 years that essentially says you can do whatever you want with some restrictions or with some constraints. Somebody bought it recently and they're doing all those things. And how do we guide it? How do we make sure that what, the result is something that this town is proud of and excited about?
Mhm.
And that's a challenge. So that's why we think it's worth spending some time on this. Paul, do you want to add anything there? Okay. So what we came up with, and I'm not going to remember who came up with each specific detail, but I do know that centering this thing on the village green that the downtown committee had, kind of come up with was Paul's idea, and I gravitated towards it. So we wanted to ensure that some of what the downtown committee focused on happens. And one of the key pieces was the village green, which is a little over an acre parcel in the middle, not too far from the grandstand, the existing grandstand. And there's a link to the report, the downtown committee report here, that actually shows it on a map, and can give you a lot more detail about the process that they went through to try to come up with the culture and feel that that the town was looking for down there. The next piece that we thought would be public benefit, and this surprised me a little bit, the survey results and how open and even excited about this idea councilors were, is that we want a pool in town. There's a lot of folks who want a pool here. And additional childcare, place for community services, some senior programming, being able to have a permanent home for the things that Todd has started out at the Community Services Hub on Payne Road. So this was our commitment to let's further that idea. We've had a community center process that did a lot of the pre-work. We didn't envision building the actual mega, I'll call it a mega structure. It was a very large structure that that team had come up with. What we were envisioning is something a little more quaint, a little more fitting to a small town Scarborough feel that has a pool, was able to support community services and the hub and senior programming. And to me, this was a big commitment. In order for this to happen, to get something on the ballot in November, there's a whole boatload of work that needs to come before that. I know it scared Tom a little bit, I'm sure. But there it is. We were throwing that out there as a good faith effort. And in exchange for that, we didn't want to pay for the land. The community services, the community center team identified very doable sites on the municipal campus. So we wanted it to be somewhat cost neutral. And so that's it. So we wanted the Village Green place to put a community center in the heart of the new town center. And then Paul, I'm going to have you talk to the large pickup day.
Well, the large pickup day, again, the bullet point 2 and 3 here are a direct reaction to the community survey. And that's really it. I think I've been the most vocal one saying the community center is dead and buried. And this made me do a 180 pretty quickly, more so for the pool than perhaps the basketball courts and everything that comes with it. Well, one of the other things, if you read the open-ended comments, one of the other common things that is brought up is about 15 years ago, we ended large trash pickup day. Now that seems silly, but I think for a lot of longtime residents of this town, it is a much appreciated service, yearly service that the town stopped providing for. Particularly if you're older and you don't necessarily have a pickup truck and you don't have necessarily the means to bring these large items to the dump. I think there's also some confusion on where to bring your large items in Scarborough, right? We have there's Casellas out there in Westbrook that I personally use. But as a town councilor, it took me actually 2 years to figure out I could go to Casellas on Tuesdays, Thursdays, or Saturdays and drop off large items. So this is nothing more than trying to bring back something that is a direct response to the survey. And frankly, there's an opportunity. So I figured, hey, this is something that I think longtime residents, that if they said, I don't envision myself ever going to a downtown and grabbing a beer outside or going to swim or using the childcare or senior programming, we can at least come to your house once or twice a year and pick up some stuff that you want brought to the dump. So that's all it is. It's literally just, I counted up the comments, and right behind the pool is clearly the most common open-end comment, and large pack trash pickup day was a common thing. So of course, like anything in the slide, it's just a point of discussion.
So does anybody on the public benefit side, which this isn't all of it, but these were kind of the asks that we called out. Any counselors want to share any feedback on?
I think in terms of I think in terms of the parcel for the Village Green, I would agree, like that was a key tenet from the downtown committee that was really about community making, which I think is what the downtown committee really wanted to see. They cared less about what stores were surrounding it and more about this place for community making. And they saw that as like a key tenet for the downtown. So I think crystallizing that and getting confirmation from them that that's going to be a key part of this, I think is critical. So I will add, I think there were also a lot of other things that were in the committee's recommendations that I believe the Downs is planning to deliver on. And so a lot of the ideas that came forward through that committee, I would like to see be crystallized in this submission. So there were other things that were talked about transportation and things like that, that will have public benefit to the community that, again, I think have already been discussed, been deliberated with the public through that committee. That again, I think I just don't want to lose sight of those, even though I agree that that was like one of the top things from that committee. I think there were a lot of other great things in that recommendation and in that report that I would like to see the Downs also crystallize. And I think that for me was the hard part about evaluating it was, you know, having been on that committee and seeing all those things and not seeing that translate into their application was a significant gap for me. And again, like I would like to see an actual plan or like some sort of like attachment or thing submitted with this that gives me confidence that a lot of that work that that committee did, they're committed to do. And that commitment is what we'll get as a result of potentially approving any sort of, you know, GMO exemption. The other thing with the community center, I agree, like I was so surprised to see in the survey how many people have said they wanted the community center. Like I hear that pretty often. I hear, when are we going to get a pool? When are we going to get, you know, other things like that for the community? And, you know, I'd love to see that also, you know, expanded upon in terms of what that actually is. The one question I still have that just is hanging over my head is, does it have to be at the Downs? And if not, then what would that mean if it's not part of this, right? Like if getting a pool meant finding a parcel somewhere else in town where we could give the community a pool that's funded by the community, is that sufficiently meeting the community's needs as it relates to the survey? You know, I don't know if that's really what they want right now. So I think there's a lot of work to be done to really define what a community center is that the community wants right now. Like I appreciate that the committee really kind of talked about like the big community center and the small community center. And my question is for what we would want to include in here, I think we would need to be very specific in terms of what it is and what it is not. So that way we know what we're getting, the community knows what they're getting. And, you know, especially when it comes to voting, if we do decide to put it forward in a vote, like we're very specific in terms of what we mean, because a community center, similar to what I said about affordable housing, means different things to different people. And I also think whatever we do for a community center, if this advances, we also need to think about like the operations of it and what that means, because I think that's going to be an important factor too when it comes to gaining public support for it if it did go to referendum. Because what does that mean in terms of operating budget that we're now going to have to like have in terms of, you know, additional costs every year to maintain that space or to service that space. So I just think those are other things that need to be thought about further as we advance this. And that was the third item. Yeah, the third item was great. But again, like I in concept, I think these are great ideas to start. I would like to see more from the committee, I guess, that was put together to bring some of those things into this conversation. And I still feel like there's more work to be done on answering the question, what is a community center? And is the Downs really the best location for it? Or are there other alternatives that make more sense, both financially and for the community? So I think more work to be done there.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Johnson.
Yeah, a couple things. Again, these are just talking points. What comes in might not be what comes out. But actually, to John's point, community center is a very large topic that needs a lot of work, and we're not going to do it here. But I would like folks to pause and think about a community center, whatever form and shape it takes, in the middle of the Downs that 3,000 people can walk to. Okay. And what the image I get in my mind is then it becomes a Downs community center. And right now I can't break away from that. But I think maybe if this moves forward and if we have further discussions, I can wrangle out of that. That's especially if an Edge came in. We all know that a big sports complex loses money on a pool. The pool is the draw. So if Edge came in, why would they build a pool when folks coming to the Edge could walk to the community center and use the pool? Those are things I think we all need to think about. I'm definitely giving it some thought. And I had one comment on the green. I kind of get it. I think, John, you missed it, that the green was to be turned over to the town. And I think the thought is that maybe we could manage events, town-centric type events. But the reality of it is a football field, just the playing side, is larger than what that green is.
Yeah.
And you really cannot, I can't fathom any events just on the, and I don't mean the sidelines and the grandstands of the football field, I mean the football field. It's 1.3 acres. So I don't know if that's a benefit. So initially, again, this is our first time discussing this. I would check that off the list.
Councilor Katarina and then Councilor Simon.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Mr. Johnson that the green's too small, but I've been saying that since I saw the acreage, and I get the theory behind, oh, you want it small enough so people are bumping into each other, but you know, if we're gonna have it, but that's beside the point. As far as the community center, my vision for a community center would definitely be to have it in Scarborough Downs. And as part of that community center, I would include, and I know I'm gonna go out on a limb here, is the library, have a branch or whatever they wanna do, but have a library, something located there, as well as rooms that could be used for intergenerational recreational opportunities, which would include seniors. Some people want to be senior only, but I know a number of seniors who are like, well, why do I want to just hang out with just seniors? I want to hang out with all sorts of different other types of people. So I see if we can do something that's a draw for everyone in town, it will avoid what Ken's talking about, which I agree with also. We don't want it to become, the private enclave of the people who live at Scarborough Downs, but it will help to draw people in from the rest of Scarborough to that area and add some life and vitality to, the retail and/or offices and restaurants and whatever I personally would like to see as part of the mixed use. So that's where I'm coming from with this. So plus land costs are outrageous. So if we can get free land, that would be huge. But yeah, I agree with you. We got to look at ongoing operating costs and whatnot. But again, we'd be putting it to the voters. So that's something to work on. But that's how I see having a community center.
Thank you. April?
So first, I want to say thank you for having the public workshop. I think that this is a great opportunity for the public to gauge where the council is right now, and I really appreciate the opportunity to hear from everybody. The notes that I wrote down ahead of the meeting are already starting to shift and change based on what I've heard other councilors say. So this is really valuable for me. I appreciate the direction that the proposal gives the council. So thank you for putting that together. Mainly because it ties that public benefit piece directly to the development that's being built. And so for me, my initial feeling is that I also would very much want the community center to be located in the Downs. I feel like it's really important for the town, not just to own the green and to have that, have that be our little stake, but also to have something else that ties the greater community to the Downs. And, to Ken's point, 3,000 people within walking distance of that community center. As soon as you said that, Ken, yep, that creates something that I had not thought of in terms of how do we make sure that this is an inclusive community center that truly does feel like it's something for the entire town and not just the people who live in the Downs. So that's definitely something, to consider thinking about. For me personally, I'm probably less enthusiastic about the pool when we talk about this idea of a community center, but could more be on board with the opportunity that I see to expand community services operations and fill the need for before care and after care in this community, because that is such a huge obstacle for so many working families. And so if we could, so for me, keeping that piece of it front of mind is going to be important. But I do see, the benefit to having this conversation in terms of it. This feels better to me, tying this directly to the development that they want to do, rather than the Downs supplying us a list of all of their public benefits that I didn't really see how they were tied to what the project that they wanted to do. So.
Can I just ask a follow-up question? Because it came up twice. Like, I just want to understand, both from Jean Marie and April, your perspective, why you think the Downs is the best place for the community center. Like, why is that? I mean, I can make up reasons myself. I'm just curious to hear your guys' perspective, since you both said it.
Sure. So for me, since I have the floor, technically I'll keep going. For me, there's no other reason for me to venture to the downtown without some kind of community hub there that is a service to the people of Scarborough. So I want to make sure that the downtown isn't just residences and commercial property, that it is providing some kind of service. And I think that that's part of what will make those businesses in the Downs successful, is driving traffic there. And if I never have a reason to go there because the town's not providing a service, then maybe I won't go.
Ditto.
Thank you.
Peter?
Oh, I can stop there, and then as we
We'll come back.
go through. Sure,
I wish I
thanks.
had a pen. I wish I had a pen. I don't have any. I had things in my head. No, so a couple quick comments. First of all, these are all awesome ideas. I think we have to be caught. There has been a ton of committee work done actually about a community center and the downtown. So I don't want us to always just spitball, right? We've had a lot of people put a lot of energy in these things. The amphitheater at Memorial Park is not very big, and that probably has the biggest community benefit of an outdoor space, I think, in this entire town, right? If you go to concerts in the park on Thursdays in the space of a football field, it's probably one of the strongest sets of communities that we have outside of a kid's sporting event. So I think that, I don't want to neglect the hours of committee work. There was a finance committee for the community center. There's a finance committee. We've run a lot of the numbers about the operation costs, and that's not me. I mean, a lot of it's there, and so I think we need to be cautious of, let's ourselves click on some of those hyperlinks, right? to remind ourselves of the committee work. And April, you hit on exactly what I was going to say is, I think a key part of this was, this actually is born out of mostly me and Ken Johnson's conversations, was that hub in my mind, I think with Ken's mind too, has been such a success that we wanted to keep that hub alive. So in my mind, I didn't like calling this a community center. In my mind, this was a community pool and community service, childcare and senior programming. So my idea of, and that's probably a community center, right? When it all comes down to it. But so to me, that's not that bullet point. The second bullet point is two things. It is a pool, but it's also keeping this great momentum that Todd's been able to do at this hub to actually provide this service, which we know if he has to go back under this roof here physically at Town Hall, we're going to be pulling these services away from our residents when we should be expanding those services. So those are my thoughts. As far as where the community center is, I'm actually pretty indifferent. And I think that's why I like this, because the Downs has to tilt me the other way, right? Convince me why that community center shouldn't be where where the tennis courts are, right? I believe where the tennis courts are, I think, the tennis courts need to be redone, and that was like one of the spots, one of the alternative sites, right? So to me, that's a point of leverage for us, right? If we truly are indifferent, then do something to make us want to go into the Downs. So those are my comments. Those, I had one more, but because I don't have a pen, I forgot it. But those are my initial, I mean, I think it's great feedback, and I'm very, to April's point, I'm very glad we're doing this, so.
Councilor Hamel.
So I think it's safe to say we're having a hard time getting our arms around this. HR geeks are fond of saying that teams go through a process of forming, storming, and norming, and then eventually performing. So guess where we are as a town and a town council in this evolutionary cycle about the downtown and the Downs exemption request. And if you said storming, you would be correct. The workshop tonight, I think, is a good step forward from storming to norming, but I think we've been way ahead of ourselves. I think we've been talking about actual contract terms and positions before we've even gotten organized as a council around that. And, I know this is an important step in trying to get us from storming to norming at some stage. And I applaud the effort to kind of lay this out and say where we would need to be if we're going to get this on the ballot in November. I think that's smart. But if you think that we're fully engaged, or will be at the end of the evening, even without our counterparty in this matter, the Downs present at the workshop, then I think we are horribly mistaken in our understanding. So we've not met yet as a council to determine our priorities as a team on this matter or ourselves in general. Or have we discussed this privately in an executive session? So, we made an error in favor of the public process. I think that's fine, but if we ask the public about it, I don't know what they'd say. I think we've got a date set soon to meet and to hunker down on this. But I really find it very troubling that we appear to be already framing a negotiation by sharing and socializing various positions on respective asks. But I'm not really, I'm not comfortable with how we're doing this. I'm mystified by also why we'd be so ready to amend a GMO that we battled over, not much more than 9 months ago, was it approved. And we spent a lot of time and effort on that. We talked about how important it was to formulate it and not to divert or depart from it. Now it seems, as if we're ready to kind of make exceptions to it. Even at the same point that the Downs is considering withdrawing their request. So I think we're a little bit ahead of ourselves. It's almost as if we're trying to replace stone tablets from the Mount with an Etch-a-Sketch. We're just trying to. It's just not feeling right to me. I agree with defining the community benefit, but we're doing that, shuffling various things back and forth that we haven't really aligned on yet. So I don't have an answer for how we do it, but and even the ask by the Downs, the last time we heard from them, it was 1,000 units over 5 years, and then it was whatever they could build. No limit on what they're going to build. I know we have a position on this in the PowerPoint, but we really don't know how it will happen or what it will look like. They've never built one of these. They've never done this. So I'll be very interested to see what comes back in February. And I don't want to be overly critical here, but in the community survey, I saw very clearly pool, community center. I didn't see so much large item pickup. I loved this when we lived in Portland, but so did everybody in Cumberland County. They'd come to your street and drop stuff off. I did not see this in the bubbles, in the document that showed how important this was as a community benefit. So with all due respect to my good friend Paul Johnson, it just didn't work for me. So anyway, I just don't think I think we need to kind of regroup. I think we need to see what they come back with in February. But I'm encouraged about what the survey told us about where the public is, but I'm struggling with how to grab a hold of the tail in this thing.
Councilor Caterina.
Through the chair, can I ask Mr. Hamel a question?
Please.
This will be fun.
Stop. Just out of curiosity, when you're talking about changing GMO, what are you talking about?
Sorry?
What are you talking about when you're talking about changing GMO?
Talking about making revisions to the GMO, or I'm in favor of us trying to define community benefit as the contract zone process, but trying to make changes. We have on the PowerPoint slide here, two things that we're willing to change on slide.
I don't have my computer.
I'm
and I
sorry, and I don't
apologize.
have the slide here, but
Here, Don, I can pull it up.
Yeah,
we
if you
said
would,
on-
if you
on
would.
slide, I think it is 8, parallel ideas. So I may be mixing and matching the
Oh,
GMO
that,
with the
yeah, yeah,
contract
yeah.
zone process.
Yeah,
But-
I'll get to that.
So again, I apologize if I'm heading ahead of myself, but I know that's work ahead of us, but I'm surprised that we would be so willing to do this before we were even comfortable with what we would get for it and how it would help us, in this effort of getting
So-
a pool or community center.
Why don't we jump ahead to this slide? Because I think
Yes.
all of my discussion or explanation might help with this.
Yeah, first of all, I don't think we're anywhere, Don. If you think that we're 10 miles down the street, I think we just took our first step. So to be honest with you, I respectfully do not understand where your perspective is coming from, because I just don't agree with the majority of everything you just said. But with that being said, with this GMO, I'll pull it right up that way.
So while you're looking at that, I'm not surprised by that comment, because you are the liaison for this effort. Okay, so you're in first position on this. The rest of the council is not, and the public is way.
Well, that's not fair, because you had this, I have fully done my duties with liaison. And so if you're suggesting otherwise,
I'm saying that we have socialized this in various ways. We have not really done it yet together.
But
as
we're
a
in the
group
middle,
before
but
this
that's what we're in the
evening.
middle of
I know
doing.
That's what we're
We
doing
gotta-
now, so I'm glad we're all.
So the
here.
reason why,
All parties are not here, and the public is watching, I'm assuming, but we don't really know
Right.
what they think.
well, cut me off if I'm getting out of line, but I think that the fact all parties are not here is by design, because I think one of the number one things that we have always said as a council, that we feel like we're always on the heels of other people's requests. This is 100% homegrown, right? They are unprepared to respond to it, frankly, because now we're ahead of them. And now, and maybe in the Scarborough Leader on Thursday, it will say that the town council wants a community center, right? So the reason why they're not here is they're not driving this bus. So if you're gonna get in the driver's seat of the bus, you got to prepare to actually drive it for a little bit, and that's what we're trying to do. We could sit back and respond to everything that gets brought to us, but I think that leads to our feelings of hopelessness sometimes with this. But back to this, because Don and I can bicker enough privately, we don't need to do it publicly. The parallel actions here, again, these are all ideas. I think by and large, these were not supported, right? So there's
Except for
that.
by Paul.
So the reason why the 7F was to refine the expectations was we got, and this is our fault. This is what, in my mind, Chairman Clucci just referenced. We got our first exemption request without any renderings or any idea of what it is. That's on us, right? That's on us, because we crafted an ordinance that application was deemed complete without enough supporting material. So number one, in my mind, makes perfect sense that what we've learned from this is perhaps we need to adjust 7F so we don't find ourselves in this position again. For those in the public and those at the council, originally, John Clucci and I said, let's repeal 7F so there's no path to exemption for a year or two, because this is the biggest exemption we're going to grant in the next 5, 10 years. So this was quite literally a way to say to the public, hey, we're satisfied. We don't need to grant any exemptions. So as part of feedback, which if I'm not mistaken, Councillor Hamel had an issue with removing the exemption path. Councillor Johnson had a removing of the exemption path. This was just saying, hey, we live and we learn. We got to refine the way 7F looks. And then number 2, resolution deferring any action on new contract zone applications for 2 years. It's the same thing. We have our number one complaint at this council level is that we're always on our heels. We thought that if we grant this, then it would give us some breathing room. Again, nobody's married to this, and there's no real language. It's just a PowerPoint presentation with 2 sentences on it. So if it's cut out by us, then so be it. I'm certainly not married to a single thing of this, besides maybe large item pickup day.
Everybody wants something. I just wanted to add that, yeah, nobody liked this proposal. The intent was, this is going to trigger a lot of growth. And the community is saying we don't want that much growth. So it was trying to create balance, and it was probably the wrong path or approach, and something we could use some help with. But that's what we came up with. So there it is, right?
Mr. Chair, just for the public, what is 7F? Because you're throwing around this term.
Part of the growth management ordinance,
Yep.
is the specific clause that allows somebody to come forward to the town council and request that specific dwelling units be exempted from the growth management.
I just wanted
ordinance.
that pointed out to the public. Thank you.
Good question. Councilor Father.
I just want to clarify and maybe Dawn put you at ease a little bit. I support council bringing a counter proposal together and us coming together as a group and discussing what would possibly be a counter proposal. That in no way means that I am on board with an exemption request. But if we can put something together that has council support to provide, for anyone asking for an exemption, then I'm on board to do that work. So for now, I'm able to kind of compartmentalize and say, okay, like, let's prepare what we think we would like to get. And I don't need to know all of the specific details of the exemption yet, but certainly my decision is tied to whatever the exemption looks like in the end. And you're absolutely right. We have no idea what their exemption request looks like, other than Mr. Risbara sitting here and saying that he wanted carte blanche permission to do whatever he wanted.
So I appreciate that clarification and your explanation of your position. We can all expect they're going to come back with a request that will have numbers in it, that will be some form or fashion of certain number of units in the downtown district over a certain number of years. And the last thing we heard was as much as we can, as fast as we can. So I expect maybe that number will go down from the last number we saw, which was 1,000, but it doesn't matter now because we haven't seen the new number, right? We expect to get that, or we hope that will be something reasonable, but they're asking us, we're in this journey to try to give them approval for a certain number of units without us really confirming A, what we want, and B, what they're willing to do for us, and if that will fit. So I just, I think they're, epochs on both of our houses, we have to get, both of our positions in order. I know this is a really messy process, and I've said this many times, I support us doing this more publicly than privately, but we haven't really, I don't think we really had a chance to talk about this, as a unit, and it's almost equivalent to negotiating a labor contract without first meeting with your committee or with your people that are authorizing you to negotiate a labor agreement without saying, what are our non-negotiables? What are the things that we want to get out of this? I think it's coming, but we've not done that yet. And I think we're still struggling with, where things will go and what they will look like. And the other things that I think that, the Downs is trying to tell us that we should care about stuff that I'm not sure we care about. Net positive revenue generated to the town and what benefit that is to the town and the taxpayers. I don't really know what that is. I really don't. I know it was mentioned when we had the last workshop with them. I don't know what kind of community benefit that is. I know we've got an expert to help us understand that and how that gives us some budget flexibility, but right now that's a very nebulous thing and a pretty complicated thing.
Councilor Johnson.
Yeah, I just want to say I don't disagree with Don, but this is exactly what we're doing, right? I mean, since I've been on the council and before I ran for the council, everybody's got the perception that everything is done in a smoke-filled room, in a dark room, and we're all huddled together. Absolutely not. I talked to one counselor about this, and we had about a 10-minute conversation on it. I'm like what April said, I'm real eager to hear other people's thoughts. Making sausage is ugly, and this is exactly what we're doing. And to tell you the truth, we probably should have done it earlier, not later, because the Downs folks are on the call and I want them to hear me, right? It isn't going well the way it's been proceeding. So hopefully if they listen to us, there is no guarantee of an exemption. I am less than neutral on an exemption at this point. Our GMO was built that we would do exceptions if there was a benefit to the town. And my definition of a benefit, I don't have an object with it, but it's gonna be a benefit. It's not a bus stop on a route that doesn't have a bus. It's gonna be a benefit to everybody in this town. Okay. And the
Well, one
numbers,
bus ride we were gonna-
I have numbers only for my own personal thing as a benchmark to gauge what is just over the top, take your ball and go home, I don't want to talk to you anymore, or, okay, this sounds maybe doable if the benefit is right, so.
Well, the one bus ride we were scheduled to have was supposed to take place today, so we canceled that. So there's no bus driver, and nobody on it.
There's no bus. Fair enough. So moving on, just to bring us back, we're here. The Downs applied in accordance with our ordinances. We have a responsibility to say yes, no, maybe if you do a bunch of other stuff, right? So the threshold question that I was trying to understand, is it a yes, no? Or are we willing to do other stuff? And my perception, and I don't want to be trying to tell you what Ken said to me, and because it gets all lost, are we willing to do something? Is there some perceived benefit that could happen? And I think the response that I've perceived has been yes. There's reason to not just say no today. We might say no tomorrow or another day, but I think there's enough there that we can work towards maybe something. Councilor Caterina.
Yeah, as I'm sitting here listening to all of this, one of the things I think that Mr. Hamel is getting at, that I would agree with him with is, I really want to see what they say. I mean, we really don't know what they're offered. They just said, oh, we just want blanket exemption, but they didn't come forward with any ideas. And this is what it's going to look like, and this is why, and blah, blah. So we need that information before we can respond. I don't think it's bad that we're having this conversation, because it is signaling to the other party, this is the things we may want to, we're thinking about here. So it would behoove you to come forward with a plan that incorporates some of what we're talking about. But right now, they're the ones that want something from us. So they need to bring us something that we can then react to. So now that we've had this conversation, it's public conversation, they've heard it, they've heard the signaling. I don't think we've given up any negotiating power by doing that. Because we can always just say no if we wanted to down the line. But I'm feeling like we're driving a little bit blind, because all I know is they want an exemption because they want to build a bunch of living units, which are desperately needed in this area. And you guys have all heard my spiel. But it's until I see something from them, then this is all theoretical.
Sure. I just want to respond to that, Jean Marie, because I agree with you. I think we need that. Unfortunately, I think we haven't really told them what good looks like. So my concern would be we get something else from them that still doesn't meet our requirements for what we need. And I would like to see us really align on what do we want from them? Like, what do we want to see from them? Is it a conceptual plan with units? Like getting very specific in terms of like, in their next submission, what are the specific things we need to see so that we can advance our conversations? I agree, I think a little bit with Don from the perspective of, I think public benefit comes later, and maybe, I don't think it's bad to be having that conversation now, because a lot of what we're discussing, they had in their initial submission. They talked about the community center, they talked about affordable housing. So these aren't, I don't think these are different from what they had. I think it's adding a more specificity from our perspective, which I think is helpful to them. So when they come back and refine the public benefit, because for me, that was something from the application that I thought was lacking. It was still pretty vague. There weren't details. So they talked about a community center, but I don't know what that really means to evaluate whether that's truly a public benefit to Counselor Johnson and other people's point that they've raised. So I would like to see us help them a little bit more by, as a council, being a little bit more specific that if they submit something again, that we're giving them good guidance on what we need so that we can fairly evaluate it.
And can I reply to that?
Sure.
For just real quickly.
Real quick.
Is, and I hear what you're saying, but to me, negotiating isn't always a one-stop thing. It goes back and forth, it goes back and forth a bit till you finally come up with something. So I'm not as antsy about doing what you're saying
I
at
just
the
don't want
moment.
this to be a back and forth process where we don't make progress. I'd like to see progress, not
Oh, yeah.
swirl. And I feel like we're a little bit in swirl right now. And so how do we get out of the swirl? And
That's why we need something from them. We need something from them.
So can I ask a question? Just sure. What model are we following here? So we have a CEA, we're obligated to, it includes parts of things we're talking about that are still open items for us. And we've laid out a process and timing. Am I correct in my understanding that the outcome to this, a successful outcome would include the following things? It would include a resolution of a request for an exemption to the GMO, and it would include something for us that's tangible, that would involve a pool and a community center and confirmation of other things that may even go back to the old CEA. But Tom, what is that? Is it a new CEA? I mean, is it, I don't know what that is. Is it, or it's a process with no name?
So
I
I've
mean,
given this one some thought, Don. When we do it, and part of it's the result of Counselor Anderson's work, but when we do a contract zone, we actually amend our ordinance and have some pages there that specifically outline what's allowed in that particular area. I'm kind of envisioning something similar here where maybe it is an amendment to the GMO that outlines this specific exemption for them. There might be other ways to do it, but then it codifies it and there's some process associated with that.
And depending on the items that parties agree on, there may well need to be separate agreements that hold both parties accountable. It really depends on the details. I was just going to make the observation. I think what I've heard resoundingly, and not just tonight, but in previous presentations, I think Councilor Anderson made the point very, very firmly when the Downs was with us back in December. We really want to see more. We really want to have a better assurance. And at least for me, the downtown is at large. The downtown is a public benefit in and of itself. So the question is, how do we assure ourselves that they're going to actually build what we want? And I don't think they can give us that assurance. Absolutely. I mean, they're going to give us they promised updated designs. That's not going to necessarily give you renderings and say on this floor, there's going to be this and there's going to be that user down here. They can't possibly, they need to be flexible. What I like about the approach that has been floated here is that we start to take control. We start to define key aspects that don't guarantee, but give you better assurance that we are going to be an active player. We're going to own property. We're going to operate property. We're going to control what happens within that property. We have a town green that we have an active interest in. So those are the sorts of ways that we can start to get comfortable, I would hope and think, with what we're going to end up with. And so I really, and Councilor or Chair Clucci and I have had this conversation back and forth. I really think the council should be focusing on the public benefit. This is for you to define. They have suggested what they think are public benefits, and you may or may not agree with them, but it's really a determination that you need to make as a body. And if you're not satisfied with what they've proposed, I think it's incumbent on you to respond and say what is satisfactory. And obviously be mindful, if you want to make this work, it's going to be something that's remotely possible. And I think the things you've chosen, at least conceptually, are within their initial request. So I don't think they're non-starters. I think there needs to be further detail. And so this is ugly. This is early, informative, but I think it's really important for the council to coalesce as a group around those things that you think are important that meet that level public benefit such that you would grant this exemption.
Yeah, just to add to that, as the liaison, I encourage everybody that's in the public, in the packet, they did respond to this in a one-page memo. And, the gist of the memo is they need time, right? So, just to reiterate, this was an effort for us to take the lead. And when you take the lead, that's what happens, right? When you take the lead, we got to get it to the public as quickly as possible, which by the way, we did. We turned it over on a Wednesday on a special meeting, get it to the public as soon as possible. We took the lead. And we're going to, according to them, if you read the memo, essentially we'll get something a little more specific in the way of renderings sometime in early February. Our bus tour I'm just saying this for the public as well. Our bus tour has been postponed that we're supposed to take today. It's postponed for 2 weeks so they can talk more specifics when we take the bus tour. So just by virtue of doing this, we have at least started to talk about a little bit more specificity. If we didn't do this, where would we be? If we didn't take this step with this workshop, we would be nowhere. This would have been asked to be put on the agenda by either a counselor or the Downs or the town manager, and we would have been voting on an open-ended exemption, and it would have been disastrous, right? So, and I'm not suggesting that was going to happen next week, because we have, also to remind everybody, we have a consultant that is just getting his feet out from under. So, hi, Jeff, how are you? So this is by no means, this is one of the big things that we need to wait for is Jeff's take on their financials, Jeff's take on their need for units. There's a million things we need to wait for, right? So we shouldn't feel bad for taking the lead on something like this. This workshop really is just to say, hey, this is what we're thinking. And then we take it from there. And to me, our next step is to wait, because we wait for Jeff. We wait for Jeff and Dan Bacon to talk. We wait for the Downs to refine what they're asking. Maybe we wait for the Downs to amend their application or in what have you. And I think we also owe it to John Anderson to get his slide up here to actually look at the next steps, because it's not a wide open abyss that is completely directionless. John Anderson's put in a lot of time to lay this out. I think he has a pretty proven track record. If you take the comp plan and something else that he's helped us put together, that we do have some sort of process that we're following. And we've yet, our consultants yet to, understandably so, he's got a lot of work to do.
I think it'd be helpful to jump, I don't know if you can bring it up, Paul, but honestly, in John's process, which we kind of did this independently, some of the background work that he identified for the council to do was to align on what would success look like. And I think that's the first step that we're doing now. So I don't know if you want to walk us through some of your thoughts here, John.
Yeah, sure. So again, this was just as a process person thinking about, how do we get to a decision that we all feel comfortable about, and what are all the inputs and outputs that need to happen so that we can get to a decision. And I took the principle that I think, Paul, you said a few months ago now at a workshop or at a town council meeting, that we own the process, and if we think it's going to take 6 months to do it right, then it's going to take 6 months. And while the Downs may need it faster, it's like, so what? Like, we have to do our due diligence, and I think it's going to take time, right? It's not going to happen overnight. So again, this was my, right after New Year's Day, sitting at my computer. So I'm not married to this. It's just to really kind of prompt conversation with everybody. But when I thought of kind of where we were based on that workshop, I did say, there does need to be a resubmission of some sort. Like, what we got was not sufficient. I think, that's something that the Downs needs to provide us, Jean Marie, as you said. But I do feel like we owe them a little bit more clarity in terms of what we expect in that resubmission. And I think what Dan provided in his memo addresses some of the things I listed here as bullets, but clearly identifying what is the number of units. As Don said, we don't know what they're really asking for. So I don't know how we ask Mr. Levine to evaluate that without having some specifics. And so I feel like we need, even if it's just directional, something to evaluate. Are we talking 200 units a year, 300 units a year, 1,000 units over the next 5 years? Like, give us a parameter that we can assess.
Just if I could, I think it's entirely reasonable for us to set parameters that are comfortable to us as well. If they're not able or willing to, and I don't know if they are, full resubmission with all the level of detail that you're all looking for, that may not happen. So this could unfold that, hey, these are the terms with which we're comfortable working with these public benefits.
Yeah.
And I don't think it ought to be a one-sided unilateral, take it or leave it. I think we need to be partners and listen to their needs as well. But
I would add, that's partially why having Mr. Levine help us
yeah,
could be a benefit. Like, I would look to him as an expert in this area to answer the question for us. How much housing is needed and what area to ensure we get a vibrant downtown?
Right. I think there's ways to put
Yeah.
constraints that start to at least define and perhaps
Mhm.
get a majority or all of you comfortable. It's workable.
So again, like when I was thinking of the process too, I leaned on the contract zoning amendment process because I feel like that is a good process. And so some of the other bullets I put here, I just kind of pulled from that. And I think that's kind of maybe my personal opinion, going back to the 7F update. I would have liked us to put a little bit more structure and maybe had leaned a little bit more on the contract zone amendment process, not just reference the part related to public benefit, but just say, if you want an exemption, it goes through the contract zone process. Because I think it's a great process that if we had some of the things in that through this, we would be a little bit further ahead. And so those other 3 bullets, again, are specific things in our contract zone amendment. Maybe we don't need all of them, but some sort of conceptual plan to, what they submitted through the downtown committee, I think is a great start. And again, maybe a little bit more parameters specifically on their ask within that could help us better evaluate what they're providing. We as part of our contract zones, we ask for an agreement, like an actual legal language that kind of binds them to their commitment. Maybe that's a step too far, but really being able to see what they're willing to commit, how they're going to be held accountable if they miss it, like those types of parameters are, to me personally, something I would like to see. And then again, I mentioned this earlier in my comments that, they did a good job outlining different public benefits, but the detail wasn't there. And I think the conversation we're having tonight, hopefully they will take some of that into consideration as they come back and better clarify some of those public benefits. So again, step 1 is really resubmit. Step 2 is really, again, I think where Jeff and town staff come in to play in terms of really helping us evaluate that application. I think we have a lot of expertise that we should be leaning on with the town staff and with Jeff now to really help look at that submission and give recommendations. We've talked a lot about, the need for, well, the one thing that I think is an area of concern is just growth in general, right? Like we heard that in the survey, people are concerned about growth. So it's not just negotiating with the Downs to make sure that this is good for Scarborough from the benefit within the Downs, but doing our due diligence to really ensure things like traffic and other things that are going to happen as a result of this are adequately getting addressed. If we grow the population by 1,000 units in 5 years, what does that mean for community services budget, for all of our town services that we also want to make sure, can we actually manage to that? Not just, are we getting a good community center? Like, do we have the actual infrastructure and means to support it? So I feel like once that's done, it really does come to us as a first read with all of that information, right? Jeff's recommendation, town staff recommendation, their submission, so that we can truly evaluate it. And I think our evaluation really does focus on the public benefit, as Tom said, leaning on the inputs we get, assuming that the application is good. I think the town and Jeff can work a little bit more with the Downs before it comes to us. Like I feel like we can lean on town staff a little bit to kind of be that first pass to say, is this ready for the council? Technically we got that application and it was the right thing to do to review it, but I think we all agreed it wasn't ready and we should have allowed more work to happen. So once it's ready for first read, we would do our typical first read. And again, I think just given the consequences of this, both really good from the perspective of the downtown, but also a little worried about the public perception around growth. I really think we need to pull in our committees and think a little bit more about public engagement. So I think one thing that the public maybe isn't fully aware of is we have these really great town committees that represent that are represented by citizens and chaired by citizens, and they talk about a lot of these issues and a lot of the concerns that I think this application might provide to the community. I think we need to leverage the committees, the appropriate committees, not all of them, but the ones that are appropriate for this type of ask, to really get their perspective and say, you know, especially the transportation committee, just as an example, what are your concerns as experts in transportation and also Scarborough residents that give you pause about this application, so we can understand that a little bit. And then I think also important is that, you know, we do need a better public engagement process around this. When you look at the survey, one of the questions that was scored relatively low was the public not feeling like they're involved in the decision making. And I think just thinking about public engagement throughout, not just at that point, but like how we're communicating all of this, how we're doing this workshop right now, is really important that we make this as transparent as possible. And again, it's really about the consequential nature of the ask. It's not, you know, just adding 50 units. We're talking about hundreds of units at a faster pace, but with some significant public benefit likely that's going to result. And we need to hear from the public a little bit more. So as we, after that phase, then I think it really does kind of go back to us to say, okay, we've heard it, we've gotten the feedback, you know, what do we need to change, if anything? Maybe we get it right in February and we don't change much. Maybe it's tweaks here or there. Maybe some counselors want to make some amendments. That needs to happen, and then we go to the second read. So again, this was just a provocation for this group to align on. I think it's important that we also highlight that we're going to need Mr. Levine probably throughout, maybe not high effort throughout, but like there will be different touch points where we'll want him over this time period. And then again, I do think the communications committee especially should think a little bit about, if we go down this path or however we do this, like what is our communications and public engagement approach, which was a topic we talked about at the last meeting, is that we really need to think more about public engagement, not just outward communications, but public engagement. So.
Well, thank you for pulling this together.
Yep.
A lot of good thoughts, a lot of good work went into it. Mr. Hamel?
Yeah, this is great work, and John has done this several times, and we used this in the past with great success. And John and Paul and I've talked about this, the idea of sort of doing a roadmap, very helpful. So a couple of things for me, though, that I think would be important for us to consider adding, if you allow. And I just, you know, want to kind of restate the loyalty oath. You know, I bought the ticket, I'm taking the ride, okay? And not only for this process, but also in terms of serving for another 3 years. So I'm committed to this process and to what we're trying to do. So I don't want anyone to misread my comments this evening that may be challenging. A couple of things that I don't see that are on here. One, do we envision having an executive session perhaps sometime before the council initial review and first reading? So I'd like us to consider adding that. I'd also like us to consider on the public engagement, that seems to be pretty far along in the process, you know, kind of the fourth month. So, you know, is there a way for us to think about how to maybe start that and embed that sooner? The other thing I'd say is your idea about town committee reviews, I think is very powerful. My only caution would be, could be very time consuming. That doesn't mean don't do it, but it means, you know, that we probably need to relook that. I don't see that as a 1 or 2 month thing. And our timing's good. You know, we're right around the time of Lent, the Lenten season, and Lamentations of Jeremiah, and we'll be, you know, have plenty to talk about. But you know, good start. The final thing I'd say, we've defined the process and the solution here in terms of GMO exemptions. That means more units are gonna be approved. It's just a question of how many and how fast,
Right.
which is our role as a council in managing growth. So there's good and bad to that. It's good because it's definitive. It's bad because we're going to be approving more units. Okay, it's going to happen if this process is successful. So just leave everyone to that. Okay.
Councilor Johnson?
Yeah, good work, John, on there. The only, and I know this can be a work in progress. I would just, hopefully that you can put a couple bullets in there. There's some stop, go, you know, go, no go decision points in there Because the way it's set up right now, it looks like we're just, we're pedal to the metal to the end. So put those in. And I just want to make one comment, try not to upset anybody, but I keep hearing the term, we don't know, 1,000 units and trying to be delicate. If you do the work, you read the documents in our packet, it states the numbers, okay? In our packet is the downtown committee. It states on 6 different slides, 500 units. No ambivalence, no equivalent, 500 units. Also in our packet, you go to the TMP, page 2. The TMP definition to the Department of Transportation outlines everything that's going on in the residential center and in the area that we're discussing right now. And that has 700 units. And we've heard that number that's floated around in the TMP. However, in the 700 units, there's 175 single family homes. Those are not exempted. So you boil it down as we're at 500. And whenever we have the next workshop, if the Downs brings anything other than 500, they're going to have some splaining to do. So then the key is, what is the duration over time to manage the pace of growth of 500? I yield back my time.
Thank you, Counselor. So I see that we're coming on the 7 o'clock hour. I do think that we touched on the key points that I had hoped to tonight. And I know it was messy and probably painful for anybody that may have chosen to watch. But, and did you say that there was a hand up in the audience?
Yes, I believe the Downs lawyer had their hand up, Ms. Tibbetts. And is your hand still up, Ms. Tibbetts? I'm going to assume it is. And are you calling her in?
Please,
Is that what
yes,
you're doing?
Ms.
Okay,
Tibbetts.
okay.
We're going to unmute you now.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson, I saw that smile as you saw my name. I really hope that you're very pleased to see me this evening or hear from me this evening. I really wanted to briefly, I'm sure it's no surprise to you. I appreciate you recognizing me and giving us just a chance to really quickly perhaps ask a question more so than provide a comment. I'm sure it's not surprising to you that the Downs team has been fully engaged in watching this workshop with great interest to understand where this is and really what we can do moving forward. And the purpose of my raising my hand here and asking for a moment of your time is to say that from our perspective, we've submitted an application that was very carefully crafted in conjunction with Section 7F of the GMO and Appendix A. And so we have certainly heard you that many of you feel that that's not going to work. But what we're really looking for as sort of a takeaway here in moving forward is what are the criteria that we're missing that are not in Section 7F and not in Appendix A? We hear in the discussions that there's something, but that doesn't exist in the GMO and it doesn't exist in Appendix A. So it's very difficult for us to put together an application to address criteria that don't exist. So we really need some guidance as to what specifically the council's looking for in order to move this forward. And I'm hearing loud and clear tonight that, the feeling is the ball's in our court to give you something to review. And we feel as though we have with a very complete application consistent with your existing ordinance. So we'd really love for the process moving forward to include, some direction for us to take away from this workshop so that we can actually give you the information that you're looking for and so that you can identify the criteria that aren't in the GMO or Appendix A that we haven't already addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Are you here to speak, sir? Please go ahead.
Oh, is this public comment?
Well, we don't have a formal public comment during workshops, but we did just allow somebody to speak. So since you're here, I welcome you to.
All right, well, good evening. As if you didn't know it, Noah Nagrin, 16 Phillip Street. This is public comment 5. I'm going to start labeling these like a very boring podcast. Last time I went over the difference between what the developer wants and what the GMO permits. This time, I would like to cover the differences between what the developer wants and what the public wants. Now, as is no secret, 67 and 66% of us responded in the survey of 21 that the pace of growth is too fast or way too fast regarding single-family and multifamily units. I already tried to explain this in my comments against Beacon, as if these results were some type of surprise. Now that we have another survey, I would like to repeat, most people responded that the town is growing too fast or way too fast. It is not just a handful of us, it is we the majority at 2-1. I would now like to explain to my counselors where this resistance comes from. They aren't making any more Scarborough, and they aren't making any more beaches, marsh, Scarborough River, boat launches, or other resources. Every time the town permits another building and increases population, more and more of us compete with each other for space in many of these resources, venues, businesses, roads, beaches, boat launches, schools, you name it. This means that every time the town permits another building, the town takes away some of my quality of life, gives it away to the new resident that is now competing with me for space, and then the town benefits because the new building yields property taxes. Let's see. So the bottom line is that some of my quality of life gets taken away, and then the town gains property tax revenue, which means that growth is a tax on my quality of life. There is no free lunch. Everything has to come from somewhere. If I have to pick my poison, then tax my fiat US dollars, not my quality of life. Nobody is here because the property taxes are low. We're here because it is supposed to be a decent place and you get what you pay for, which the survey did reflect. Man, I cannot breathe in these things. I usually do this without one. Let's see. Okay. I hope that my counselors can see why it is still not fair to consider a GMO exception. This exception would result in me, the existing resident, getting my quality of life taxed significantly. In conclusion, please end your consideration for GMO exception using the rationale that the public doesn't support an increased pace of growth. You should be enforcing this GMO strictly, which has been out for less than a year. I do not wish to be told that you did all that work to pretend you were going to manage the out of control growth that we are still suffering through. Growth is a tax, growth is the problem, and it's time to put the brakes to it. Thank you for your valuable time and consideration. I'll be back.
Thank you, sir.
I gotta go.
Mr. Levine, thank you for sticking with us through the end. I'm gonna toss it your way. You still with us? You still on board?
Oh, I'm still here. This has been great. Really fascinating. Thank you.
Well, thank you for bearing through it.
I've got a contract with him. He can't go anywhere.
I mean, this is all just my 2 cents. This is all a normal part of this kind of process. So it's been really helpful for me. That's why I've been listening and not speaking.
Well, thank you, sir. We look forward to working together. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
We have to call the roll.
Yeah, you have to do a roll.
Workshop, can you just call it?
We have a remote participant, so I don't.
Roll.
Counselor Snyder,
Yes.
Counselor Paul Johnson,
No.
Counselor Katarina,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson.
Yes.
Counselor Ken Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Chair Cloutier.
That's great.
Whatever you're
Yes,
doing.
we're adjourned.
That's
Have a great
Next
evening,
one.
everybody.